cutting-edge guests, awesome, uncensored, jaw-dropping information, plus funny memes, good deeds, and loads of laughter. We kind of have it all. Ladies and gentlemen, if your soul's awake, then welcome, because you're in the right place. All right, you sovereign souls, you divine lions and lionesses, welcome back to the third episode in our Secrets of Antarctica series. Hidden bases, UFOs, ancient ruins, crystal skulls, and more. The second tranche of UFO and alien files has just dropped, and what's inside may fundamentally challenge humanity's understanding of history, religion, and our place in the cosmos. Dr. Michael Salla hails author and explorer Brad Olsen as the Indiana Jones of our time. Having self-financed his own expedition to the icy continent, Brad Olsen joins myself, Brad Wozny, to share jaw-dropping revelations from his new book, Secrets of Antarctica, The Untold History of the Ice Continent, and much more that's just come out in the files. Stay tuned. Share this with spiritually awakened patriots across the planet. You do not want to miss this. And here we are. We are back, the two Brads, live on this Saturday, the May 23rd. Mr. Olsen has just returned from Germany, where he's been speaking and also contact in the desert. So thanks for being here again, Brad. And it's
hey, good to be here.
Yeah, you too. Haven't seen you since we did Bosnian pyramids with the great Dr. Sam Osmanagich. And just FYI, everybody, he sent this over to Brad and I just in the last few hours. This man has been featured not only as a scientist, explorer, and an author, but as the most influential scientist and explorer redefining ancient civilizations 2026. So that was an epic episode that we did with the Bosnian pyramids. And you and I are soon going to be together in about 2 weeks, Brad. And thank you for everything that you do, because Dr. Michael Salla, as everybody knows, has called you the Indiana Jones of our time. So, and bless you for everything that you do and that you share with the world. How are you?
Well, thanks, Brad. But I could call you the real life Indiana Jones too. You're no slacker. You're getting out there and doing stuff. So it's great to talk all things pyramid and Antarctica and all the weird and wonderful things in between.
Yeah, most definitely. I appreciate that. I've only discovered one pyramid in Squamish, BC. You know, that's Step Temple. It's only been one. But you guys are out there. I haven't financed my own expedition to Antarctica and peek what's behind the ice wall. But it's just wonderful. And everything, by the way, that we're going to be talking about today, from Disclosure Files and the Secrets of Antarctica, is in Brad's book. So CCCpublishing.com. Links below the description, everybody. Get yourself copies of this book. And then you can also follow Brad for wherever he's speaking around the world. But yeah, tell me how you're doing. Because the last time we were together, there were no UFO file releases whatsoever. And people might still have considered these subjects fringe and BS and aliens and whatever. Okay.
Isn't it amazing how much things change even in just the couple weeks since we spoke last? Because we've had that first data dump, and then the other one just came yesterday, that I'd say all UFO researchers worldwide have been vindicated that this stuff is real. In fact, one of the original data dump from the FBI was about the Germans testing UFO craft in the Black Forest region in 1943. And I brought this up at my German conference, which was the largest UFO conference in all of Europe. Wow. And I'm heading down to Contacting the Desert this weekend for the largest UFO conference in America to give this talk, in which I say that in these release files, they're talking about dish-shaped craft that could achieve 40,000 foot elevation and 1,500 miles an hour. So once again, all the stuff that we've talked about with the Germans and their prowess in backward engineering alien technology and releasing their own UFOs, we've all been vindicated. And I have quite a few images in the book of the different UFOs that were developed. So certainly one of these honeyboos, were being tested in this Black Forest region, according to these documents that have been released.
Yeah, I remember 2015. I went through the Bhagavad Gita, and if everybody knows the Bhagavad Gita, it even discloses, and there's evidence of all of this now over in India and in the Indian Ocean. It discloses a nuclear war between multiple races flying in Vimanas as well. And yet here we are with that same disclosure, and you called it a honeyboo. Would you just let everybody know a little bit of the background as to what that is, Brad, and take them through it for people who are just, the curiosity factor has gone into the wow factor right now, and they really don't know anything about UFOs and their types?
Sure. Yeah. Well, and the reason I go into such detail in the book about these craft, there's even photographs of them and blueprints from the designing tables of the Third Reich. This is an interesting shot where you can actually see the SS logo on the bottom of this craft. So they've been working on this stuff, backward engineering this craft for some 85 years. So you can imagine how advanced they are now. But how it ties into Antarctica, well, the Battle of High Jump, or Battle of Antarctica, which we portray on the cover, there's a Honeyboo craft. Was their main craft, the Honeyboo 2, that they were able to mount guns on and weaponize these flying craft. And some of them were seen during World War II, but they were very, very paranoid about one of them getting shot down and falling into enemy hands. So you even have a sighting at the Battle of Kursk, the largest tank battle in history in the Soviet Union.
Yeah, the Russians against the Germans.
Man, it was fierce. I mean, they were going at each other so hard. Sometimes tanks would bump into each other, and whoever could get the turret around fastest and blow up the other one would win that battle. But there were reports of a flying disc out in the distance. The Germans didn't know it was theirs. The Russians weren't sure whose it was. They kind of both might have thought it was the other side, or maybe even aliens watching this battle. But it was really the Germans just doing surveillance and reporting the position of the Soviet tanks. So there were reports of these being used in World War II, but they didn't have enough of them, nor were they weaponized properly to make a difference in the war. But there's also the orbs, which were called Foo Fighters by the Allies. And those too were on the developmental table. And there are pictures of them in this chart that I just showed with all the different variations of craft that they're developing, including vril craft, which are smaller in size, and even a larger mothership type craft called the Andromedan. So they were working on quite a few different anti-gravity flying craft. And you can see in this one, they even have the orbs as some of the different types of flying craft that were developed, all called the Honeyboo fleet, but they're also the vril craft in here too. And the vril were the smaller ones. And in the schematics of the Andromedan blueprint, there's room for 4 smaller vril craft and 1 larger Honeyboo craft. So, I mean, they were all set. And had the war gone another 6 months, or if they would have started it in 1947, which was the original plan, I think if they started it that late or even had another 6 months, we'd all be speaking German in North America and certainly in Europe, because they would have just had these wonder weapons online and very little chance that the Allies could have withstood that kind of advanced technology.
That's wild to me. I mean, going back for a second and bringing it forward and how it relates to Admiral Byrd's expedition, which you outline in the book. You know, Foo Fighters and Andromedians. Right after Nirvana broke up and Kurt did what they reported he did, which I don't believe he really did.
I don't either.
Whatsoever. Then you have Dave Grohl, Taylor starting up the Foo Fighters. Where do you get the name the Foo Fighters? I mean, that's never existed before in history except World War II. These things, these golden orbs. So is this something that maybe the music industry is putting into our consciousness and kind of playing with something, for example? And then, you know, you mentioned wonder weapons. Yeah, just imagine if 6 months later you had the anti-gravitic technology that they have in these craft, coupled with directed energy weapons, and all you've got are bombs, bullets, and bayonets. That's it. It's a done deal. Forget it. It would be a completely different life that we're living in right now. And then, you know, we had the Admiral Byrd expedition that went down to Antarctica. One thing I've got as the levity part, love levity and liberty. For me here, Brad, this is a surprise for you because you mentioned that during that battle in Kursk with those tanks, there was a craft just hovering there. And what is it? Are the aliens just watching, or was it the Germans reporting? Maybe they were doing this.
This is the grand finale, isn't it?
Grand finale. It certainly feels that way. Well, before we get into Admiral Byrd and everything that you're about to share with us in the book, let me ask you, for somebody who's been in this for decades and lived to see people who have spoken out, whistleblowers, or try to share truth, things that have happened to them, which have been extremely nefarious because the deep state, the bad, dark shadows do not want this information out there. What does it feel like at this point in time, just over the last few weeks, from what has come out from a disclosure? What does that feel like for you?
Well, it feels like a complete vindication. Just a few months ago or several years ago, anybody who talked about this stuff, like the Germans backward engineering alien tech, you'd be a conspiracy theorist. You'd be in the cuckoo wacko department. But here's the blueprint of the Andromedian, and if you look closely, you can see the 4 smaller vril and the 1 honeyboo.
What page is that on? I just want to look at my book.
Page 109.
Page 109.
So yeah, I mean, I think at this point, Brad, we're all vindicated for talking about this. Everybody who has poo-pooed us is eating crow at the moment because you see now, even the government, this is the beginning of disclosure that we've all been waiting for. And that's really when the government starts to fess up that they know about this. And while a lot of people are saying that this is a nothing burger with these releases, at least it's something. You know, a lot of it is still redacted out of there. You can't read the full documents. But it's enough to say that the government has been keeping files on this for decades.
Yeah, definitely. And on that page 109, so for those of you knowing that this is our 3rd series, the series of Secrets of Antarctica, based off Brad's book, his knowledge, all of his experience, wisdom, and his own contacts too, what we're bringing to you, where everybody can ask Brad questions in the live chat a little later on too. When you're looking at page 109 of that Andromedian, all the blueprints are written in German. So when you're looking at this craft, it actually has a honeyboo in the middle. So this is like a ship. It's like an aircraft carrier, but in the sky, to launch other smaller fighter aircraft, which happen to be these honeyboos. Incredible. So yeah, go to page 109 in your book for everybody that's got the book finally now, and yeah, just follow along. That's brilliant. Holy crap. And it's all in German.
Yeah.
You know, I've had your books, your Beyond Prison Planet, Beyond Prison Planet, Beyond Esoteric Prison Planet, Escaping Prison Planet, you know, going back nearly 4 years now. And a lot of that stuff that you've even put in there is written in German, you know, and all this, like the societies, the bad societies that have been around to hijack us and enslave us are incredible. And what you continue to do. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you. It's good to be recognized.
Yeah, well, I absolutely deserve it. And that you're still here with us and rocking it and vindication.
Yeah.
And everybody else who's watching, who have spoken out, been whistleblowers who are part of the conferences, in the benevolent. Yeah, it's fantastic. So thank you everyone for holding the line. I've got a video here. I showed it to Brad earlier before he came on. It's the one video. On the left side of the screen, what everybody's about to see is from the UFO disclosure files yesterday that just came out from the Pentagon, the second tranche. And on the right side, split screen, is one that was recorded a few years later in China in 2024. So we had these craft, and people are pairing it up and going, look what they disclosed over here matches up to this over here. So this is going to be about a 45-second to 60-second video. I'll play it for you right now. Check this out. And there's no sound, but the image you're seeing on the left is glowing, as according to the Department of War, glowing under infrared. So you can only see it in infrared. So NAG UAP 1 June 2020. And then we've got China, October 29, 2024. And you're seeing a ship or a being. I don't know exactly what it is, but there's even a part coming off that. I think that's a ship on the right. But you're seeing things change and morph.
Yeah, I mean, it almost looks like space junk, but it's moving around and pieces are coming and going.
Yeah,
that's pretty wild. Yeah, and this is the latest, and there's still supposed to be a lot more forthcoming.
A lot more. Yeah, all of them. And then, the updates on the religions of the world, right? Like, okay, if you have pyramids that are 32,000 years old, and we haven't been able to go to the Antarctica for a little while, and Brad's going to tell everybody why, in case this is your first show, to bring you up to a level of speed and awareness as we go through here, then, what you believed, you kind of have to suspend judgment and know that there's a lot that we don't know, that we still don't know, but be open to knowing it, and go check it out yourself and get Brad's book. So Brad, Antarctica, why is this such a secret? What has been going on down there, Admiral Byrd, and then what happened after that? Why can't you even go down there when you financed your expedition on your sailboat?
Well, we did go down there, and we were allowed to travel where we wanted to, but keep in mind, Antarctica is the 5th largest continent of the world. So where we went was just a grain of sand in the larger picture of the entire continent. And per the Antarctica Treaty, it says in the laws that was ratified in 1959 and is still in effect, that Antarctica would be preserved as a biosphere natural reserve with no mining, no drilling, no overfishing, or even military exercises, part of the Antarctica Treaty. Yet it also designated certain places that are no-go zones, no fly, no overland travel allowed. And that's really strange. That kind of goes counter to the preserving the continent for science. And as I discuss in this book, that the Antarctica Treaty was a direct result after Operation High Jump, in which the U.S. got their ass handed to them and hastily retreated 2 months into the 6 to 8 month expedition, which was basically an invasion force to dislodge the Antarctic German bases in New Schwabenland and to retrieve 2 of those crafts. They knew that they had at least 2 of these flying saucers down there because the British had cracked the German code-breaking machine Enigma. And so they were spying on them in Antarctica. I went to a couple of the spy bases at Port Lockroy and also Vernansky. And you can just walk right in there. It's like you're just going back in time 90 years and walking into these spy stations where they're getting the unencrypted transmissions from Berlin to the U-boats. So the British knew they were bringing huge amounts of material and personnel down there. Of course, they tipped off the Americans, who were going in with Operation High Jump. And concurrent with High Jump at the end of 1946, the Russians, with the intelligence that they had gathered at the end of World War II, they found the submarine maps, and they were trying to reproduce and retrace the steps of those submarines. But when they got to the choke point underneath the ice going into the continental area, submersibles came out to block their passage. So that was unsuccessful. Operation High Jump was unsuccessful. But all the while, the Americans and the Soviets are watching each other with suspicious eyes, kind of like a Mexican standoff. What are you doing here? I don't know. What are you doing here? And they're both trying to penetrate this German base under the ice called New Berlin. And the new information we have on New Berlin, there's a book that Tyler Kiwala, who does The Journey of Truth, he and I just did a pod together a couple of weeks ago when I was in Sedona. And there are pictures of the New Berlin base in this book that we were talking about. And I sent them to you. Maybe you want to pull them up and show everybody.
Yeah. So tell us what we're looking at here.
So this is apparently the New Berlin base under the ice. It says photo of the inner Earth, but keep in mind 2 miles of polar plateau with volcanically, geothermically heated big domes under the ice. It would feel like you're in inner Earth, although you're not even necessarily below the continental level. But this could be on the land level below those 2 miles of ice. And so here you have some. That last photo, some elite officers walking by a battalion. And I was telling Tyler, I think this is what Hitler referred to in one of his final speeches called the last battalion. And I'll read you that quote he said. Is very cryptic because it's almost certain that Germany is going to be defeated. So Hitler's final speech in 1945, he refers to the last battalion as a force that would fight, quote, from the outside after the war. On February 24th, he made this prophetic speech in which he said these words: "In this war, there will be no victors and no vanquished either, but only the dead and the survivors. The last battalion, however, will be a German one." And there they are down in the New Berlin base. And also keep in mind, in the final months of the war, Kriegsmarine Admiral Karl Donitz was tasked with a secret mission to move the last battalion out of Germany, presumably to Antarctica. Wow. At the end of the war, there were over 100 U-boats that were unaccounted for and essentially disappeared. In Hitler's absence, Admiral Donitz signed the surrender documents for all the German armed forces in the early May 1945, but not for the Third Reich and not for the SS, because they went underground. And as I propose in the book, that was the beginning of the Fourth Reich, which has been operating out of Antarctica and the South America micronations ever since.
Wow. What are we looking at here with this old photograph?
So here's another, it says construction of buildings of the inner Earth in the New Berlin base. So the Russians had first dibs on all the information that came out of Berlin. They were the first to get there. So they got the lion's share of documents, including these U-boat maps that they tried to reproduce with their own submarines, and as well as using these documents to discover what the Germans were up to. So there was a great researcher named Vladimir Terzinski who had access to these German docks. And his quote is, "The city of New Berlin was developed into the inner Earth as part of the Germans' South Polar colony. were admitted by the inner earthlings to build a city there. So that being the domain of the Ariani, which Admiral Byrd said that he flew his plane down and connected with. And so Terzinski said they built most of the buildings that architect Albert Speer was planning to build in Berlin. Of course, the war was lost and Berlin was trash. So they moved all those plans over to Antarctica and they built New Berlin under the ice.
Wow.
And these are photos of them building the New Berlin city, which we've been able to retrace the steps of the U-boat maps and the directions. And get this, Brad, this is the on Google Earth where they went within 100 miles.
What page are you on?
South Pole.
Okay. What page are you on, Brad?
That is page 49.
49. All right. Everybody that you can follow along in your book. Right?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Kate, and just if I could provide a moment of context here, Brad.
Sure.
From what I've learned from you and so many others. So again, page 49 in your book that Brad was just showing, right, the map. I'll put it back up here for everyone too. But what you see here is these are documents that were classified that the Russians got from the Germans after the Russians got to Berlin first. They beat Patton. They beat the U.S. Army. To Berlin. So what they did is they captured all the intelligence that hadn't been destroyed, brought it back to the Soviet Union, Moscow, and other locations. And this information comes from the Soviets that they had captured back then, all these decades later, which you've been putting out there in your books and your works. So think about that, everybody. 100 submarines, U-boats, 100 submarines unaccounted for. That doesn't mean sunk, right? Oh, we blew up a submarine. Well, back in the World War II, you're going to know that you took down a submarine, whether it's depth charges or torpedoes. You're going to hear the hull crushing under the pressure, the breaking up underneath, and then you'll see the diesel that'll come up from it and everything that floats into the surface. So 100 submarines, U-boats, did not land and did not sink. That's interesting. And all of these records that it was down there. And I just had a show I had last night. I had 3 shows yesterday, Brad. I was on, and one last night. They talked about in just north of Edmonton, Alberta, the largest, apparently, deep underground military Nazi CCP-run reptilian base was finally liberated, I guess, 2 weeks ago. There was a massive one out in Quebec that the White Hat military went in with their super soldier program just a few weeks before that and liberated the base underneath there in Quebec. And so we're seeing this now because I've seen videos, reported videos, right? I haven't run it through something to figure, is that AI or not? But with all disclosure coming out, it's amped up. And it is people who say that they are from New Schwabenland and that they are the 3rd or 4th generation of the Nazi Third Reich that went down there as the Fourth Reich. And they want to come forward and they want to rejoin the world. I've seen these videos. I mean, I'm questioning them for sure, the validity of it. Have you heard of this?
I have, yeah. And Stuart Swerdlow, who is among the last surviving Montauk boys, he's been going on the interview circuit and talking about a friend of his who was born in New Schwabenland under the ice, talks about the big domes of ice that he grew up seeing. And he's been in touch with Stuart and saying, can you kind of get it out there to the rest of the world that we want to let them know that we're here. And we'd like to tell them that we want to rejoin the world, but we don't know how they're going to react with the knowledge that there's a Fourth Reich that has been in effect since the end of World War II. Wow. So they're kind of just biding their time once again. But I'd say in this era of disclosure, Brad, that the time will come very soon when they will make themselves known. Tuzursky, this Russian researcher who pored over all the Antarctica files himself, he said that that they even have an embassy not far away from the UN building in New York City. And of course, you need a key code to go up there. It's a secret floor. But when the door opens, if you're allowed in, you're in the embassy for the Antarctica Germans, that they're actually declaring themselves like an independent nation. Yeah. So I brought all this up at my talk in Germany 1 week ago.
Wow.
And there was even another a speaker there named Lothar Lohan, and he is an inner Earth emissary. And he says, oh yeah, they these Antarctica Germans, they want to rejoin us. They want to come home and even open it up so other Germans or other people can come there. That they certainly are taking a more peaceful stance than they once had, but saying that they want to rejoin the world. And we're going to have to see, maybe in this era of disclosure, Trump ordering all these files coming out, that we could very well have knowledge of the New Berlin scientific city, as well as the other colonies down there. Now, on the back of my book, I say all roads lead to Antarctica. Of course, there's no roads that lead to Antarctica, but what it means is so many of these different subjects pertaining to disclosure could very well come out of Antarctica.
Yeah. And this, I think I mentioned that you were at Contact in Desert. You corrected that, and you are coming up to speak about that. U-boats under the ice, Secrets of Antarctica is what you'll be speaking out there. Yep. There's the thumbnail of it, which is amazing and massive. So if they have existed there with their bases, with their re-engineered alien craft, free energy, etc., how is it they were allowed to exist as human beings when there's other stuff outside the ice wall and all of this history? How could that have happened then, Brad?
Well, I'm not so sure there really is an ice wall. It's being confused with the ice shelf, because glaciers, when they push off of the continent, they create these large ice shelves. One of the big scientific discoveries this year is they took a submersible and they went well deep under one of these ice shelves, and they found where the Jonah ice fish have their mating grounds, and they create little nests in the bottom of the soil. So the reason why that is significant is because a wall indicates going straight down into the ground, but that's not the case with these ice shelves. And of course, there is an inner continent of Antarctica. I set foot on it, got pictures right here on my cell phone. And so in the cosmology of flat Earth, Antarctica does not exist, but I'm here to tell you that it definitely does.
So let's go there then. Ice wall. Do you think what they did, Game of Thrones, ice wall, was kind of like the Foo Fighters, Dave Grohl, Taylor? They went out and they started this band, or the music industry started it, right, and brought them over, and was to kind of throw people off.
Yeah.
The scent, the trail. And you're looking at Game of Thrones wall. It's a psyop. So they're like, really, it's ice shelf, and tell everybody about the continent that you experienced with the photos on the phone, just so they can hear it first person from the horse's mouth.
Okay. Well, why don't I even queue up some of my pictures from Antarctica?
Yeah, sure. And I've got your other ones here to go as well. So it depends on however you want to take it.
Okay, so just keep in mind that a psychological operation is to get people to think in such a way that they believe something that is not true or is a partial truth. And I think the reason they chose Antarctica to be the ice wall, not the Arctic area, which is also frozen ice, but in this case, the ice shelves are much taller in Antarctica because they're coming off of the continental landmass. And so in the case of this PSYOP, they'll give you some information which is actually factually truthful, such as there are civilizations within under the ice in Antarctica, that being what we've just talked about, the Nüberlin base and the other German colonies and the domain of the Ariani. So I think the PSYOP is to give you a little bit of that truth, not really saying, okay, this is it. This is these other locations beyond the ice wall. Mm-hmm. But what they're really trying to distract you from is saying, well, okay, now that we know that there's civilization down there, we just don't want them to really put two and two together and find out that that there are these civilizations down there. So they're basically confusing the whole notion of what it is. And here I am queuing up Antarctica. I'll just flip it right when we get to it.
Sure.
Okay, I'll just keep going. This is in, all of these are in Antarctica. Just random shot there going by an iceberg. See what I'm doing here. I've got hundreds of photos there with my girlfriend. We did the polar plunge.
Right on.
Jumped in naked, and that's a really beautiful shot.
Oh yeah.
It's a kind of scenery down there.
I've been to the Arctic. You've been to the Antarctic.
Yeah, and here's one day when it was so warm, we were in our bathing suits on the deck of the sailboat.
Nice.
So it's kind of a misconception that it's always cold down there.
Yeah.
And here is the sailboat in the distance visiting one of these research stations.
Beautiful.
So, yeah, I mean, it's just pretty, to me, it's quite clear that they're trying to take the whole continent of Antarctica away. And here's a small version of an ice shelf, just these big glaciers breaking off into the ocean. And that's what's being confused with an ice wall that supposedly goes all the way down to the floor of the ocean, and then what is beyond the ice wall. But we're both saying, both flat earthers and me talking about these civilizations under the ice, we're talking about the same thing. But the PSYOP is throwing us off, saying that, well, don't look under the ice, look beyond the ice wall, and there you'll find your civilization. There's your classic PSYOP. And so other people such as Gene Decode and Wano Savin, they both said, well, look, follow the money. Where did these really slick videos from about 15 years ago come from? And they both say they're from DARPA. DARPA is putting out this misinformation with funding from the Vatican, because in the flat earth cosmology, they always talk about the firmament, this area above in our atmosphere, which is a word from the Bible when they're describing a flat earth in the Bible. So I think the Vatican loves this PSYOP too, because it will confirm these myths that were put out in the Bible.
Yeah. And Wano Savin will be back on tomorrow. And Gene and I were just chatting with each other yesterday.
Ask him about this then.
Yeah, we'll do. Yeah, I've fed multiple shows. Been grateful to have multiple shows with each of those.
Yeah, and ask them what they think the flat Earth PSYOP is all about.
Yeah, I have. It's bullshit. Yeah.
Okay.
It's total bullshit. Part of a form of control. Those aren't their exact words, by the way. I'm just paraphrasing for everybody to get it out of the way. So when we look at the thumbnail that we have for the show here today, hidden bases, UFOs, giants, ancient ruins, and there might even be a crystal skull hanging out on that thumbnail, right? And pyramids, and this is the truth that they don't want you to know. Tell me, Brad. I mean, you kind of already painted a little bit of giving it some brushstrokes here just over the last few minutes, but why precisely do they not want our civilization? And I'm talking about the bad guys. Everybody needs to, here's your sign. Bad guys don't want us to know this. Why, in your opinion, so experienced, do they not want us to know this information?
Well, I think just for the same reason they're not really giving us the smoking gun with these UFO files, that there's a lot of detracted evidence. There's still grainy videos. I'm sure they have very, very high res images of UFOs and crafts that they haven't released yet. Because when you think about when people start to think about other extraterrestrials coming here, after they go through the, oh, wow, they're coming from a far distant planet. How did they get here? Then the discussion goes into 0-point energy, into free energy, into exotic propulsion. And the powers that be do not want us to get off of the gold, oil, nuclear, gold and gas system of energy on this planet. It's still very, very profitable. You know, energy is the number one profitable business on this planet. And they don't want that to go away, because if you were to have free energy, boy, you'd make that industry obsolete pretty quick. So that's been the large part of why this has been kept from us. Plus, they're backward engineering this technology. I don't think they want us to know that we have craft that could start exploring the universe. So we have already in our possession what Ben Rich called the technology to take ET home. And he was the Skunk Works, which is the name for the secret black programs out of Area 51, right, with Lockheed Martin in the 1980s. And on his deathbed, he had a change of heart. And he says, well, I'm just going to tell people that we have technology beyond your wildest dreams. But he said, to get those programs out of the black projects would take an act of God. And so I don't know if this latest release has been an act of God, but I do know that some of the best material is yet to come, if it is even going to be released.
It's almost like we've seen multiple times. You've shared it multiple times. Others, that on his deathbed, the guy that was running NASA, not a space agency, right? I think that's a great acronym.
Never a straight answer.
Yeah, never. Oh, that's a good one. I haven't heard of that. That's fantastic. Fantastic. Said that the last card they're going to pull is fake the alien invasion.
Right.
Blue beam. So I have a theory that part of this is front running that.
I agree with you.
Humanity. Yeah. You know, like if the deep state and their reptilian overlords, they're still here, are going to try to fake an alien invasion to scare the crap out of everybody, like they did, you know, Plandemic one that just happened, and then they tried to pull it off with hantavirus, and that died the next day, right? And then Ebola, we're like, okay, well let's just pull out Ebola 3 days later, and then, you know, that's gone the wayside, and we're like, well, Pfizer's own documents show that those are effects from the jabs that you just gave us, so we're not going to buy your stuff anymore. This has to be part of the front running to that, and then
I think so.
And the release of free energy.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, that would be the grand prize in it all. But I think they're going to try the scare tactics with the alien invasion, and as you said at the beginning of the show, possibly the return of the Messiah in different cultures. That Muhammad shows up in the skies over Arab countries in the middle of another war over there. Buddha shows up in Far East, Krishna around India, and we get Jesus.
Yeah, I get you.
So that's all part of Project Bluebeam, and I outline it in my book, Beyond Esoteric, Escaping Prison Planet. If people want to look into that in a little more detail. But I would also say this too, Brad, you're right about the front running, because why now? Why are they finally coming around after almost 100 years of this knowledge? Why now? And why in this mood of so many people? I mean, look, we already know disclosure has already started from the ground up. We don't need the government to finally say it. But I thought what was interesting when the Fox News covered this 2 weeks or a week ago after the original data dump with Jesse Waters, and he named 4 ET types. He named the reptilians, he named the small grays that we see in the movies, he named the Nordics, but he also named the insectoids. Yep. And the insectoids are supposed to be this attacking force in the fake alien invasion that, according to Randy Kramer, who is tasked by the military to be a voice talking about getting this into the narrative. So front running this whole idea that we're going to be invaded. But like Werner von Braun said to his assistant in the 1970s, to Carol Rosen, he said, don't believe it. They're going to try to fake this alien invasion. They're going to try to get everybody to believe it. And the reason they're doing it now is to move us into the full implementation of this new world order. And then you have the fast tracking of all these data centers all over the country, all over the world. What they really are is mass surveillance centers. So you can see how all the pieces of this puzzle are coming together and how they will all tie together with this fake alien invasion and the return of the Messiah.
Yeah, and do as I say. As I agree with the thing, you know, if on the Project Bluebeam side, I have that clip here from Jesse Waters from Fox saying that. Brad, do you mind if I play that?
Go right ahead. Yeah, people should see this.
Good. Here it is, everybody. Again, this was on May 19th, 4 days ago. Fox News, the 4 types of alien species.
We're not alone. The Pentagon released the UFO files a few weeks back, and we just found out over 1 billion people have visited the site. 1 billion. It's got to be a record.
It's a 2-minute clip.
The War Department says more files will be released soon. UFO experts and top researchers have been investigating aliens for years. Their sources say dozens of crashed UFOs have been recovered, and what they found inside, shocking.
And do people think that there's one type of non-human intelligence that's visiting the Earth, or is there many, many types?
People who have been involved in recoveries have said
there are at least 4 types, 4 separate types. Now, I have not had direct access to that, but I believe the people who I talked to.
4 different types of life.
4 different types of life.
4 different species of aliens. Another scientist called them Greys, Nordics, Insectoids, and Reptilians. All of them have 2 arms and 2 legs, just like us. Experts speculate the reptilians are scaly with long tails, like a lizard. Insectoids look like a praying mantis. The Greys look like your classic movie alien, and the Nordics look like a regular Swedish guy, but 7 feet tall. We haven't seen the evidence, but Pete Hegseth says more evidence is coming, and there are a lot of believers in Congress.
I have seen evidence in a skiff that leads me to believe there are things we cannot explain, and I have observed things that are of non-human origin and creation. That's my opinion.
Releasing the files isn't easy. They've been hidden for years, and a lot of people want to keep it that way.
The problem we have right now is the deep state's fighting the president on release, and he kept his word, and I suspect some of our not-so-friendly comrades and some of our alphabet agencies are slow-walking a lot of the information. It's about power, it's about control, and that's kind of what runs Washington.
So why is our own government fighting so hard to keep these secret? Well, 12 scientists have either gone missing or died. Now, we don't know if that's related, but people are scared to talk.
One I thought was going to do an interview, and then a couple days before sent me a message saying, after further consideration and long talks with my wife, I decided I'd be forfeiting my life if I participated in your interview. And I thought that was like very unsettling message to get, obviously, but also very specific word choice, you know, forfeiting my life.
There it is, everyone. And that was 4 days ago, before yesterday's drop, the second tranche. You have Kira Cosmos says, hi, Brad and Brad. Yep. Why now? Love this. Thank you. And then the data centers, Kim in Wisconsin, who's here, is a great supporter, says, we'll match the 15-minute cities. So you're kind of alluding to that. You see Palantir and Flock everywhere.
Yeah.
All deep state. And what is it? You can't go through a rural road in the United States now. Since 2024, in 2 years, they have erected facial recognition, surveillance technology, and automatic license plate readers. And hundreds of thousands of these cameras are all across the United States already.
And unaccountable to no one. And nobody voted for this. Nobody wanted it. Nobody asked for it. Just like these data centers, they're just popping up everywhere. But of course, with all this surveillance, you need that kind of computing power in these so-called data centers. I call them mass surveillance centers. I just read it. There was a article about a high-speed chase out here near me in Nevada. Some guys stole a car in Reno. They didn't even get to the next town over, Hawthorne, along the 95. When they pulled into a gas station, then the cops saw that that was an opportunity to move in on them. They had already read the license plate, know it was a stolen car, moved in to arrest them. They took off driving, then they eventually caught them again in California. So it's already happening. It's already on rural highways. And then, of course, you've got those speed limit cameras, and now they're building into all new vehicles in 2027 the automated AI-driven controls, so that if it detects you're doing something wrong, it can control your speed or even kill the engine. So it's really creeping into our everyday life.
Yep.
And again, nobody wanted this, nobody asked for it, but it's being festooned upon us.
Yeah, definitely. So going back to the book and where we are with the pyramids and the UFOs and the UFO file disclosure and giants and other beings, do you think that is going to come? Because this is your slide you sent me, which is coming up, or just happened rather, the UFO Con 2026. And it's a beautiful slide that just happened in Germany, the UFO conference. When we're looking at other craft, you also sent me this about the first television picture from space, Tiro satellite, April 1, 1960. What are we looking at? What else do you think is coming up in disclosure? Very open-ended conversation and question here where we can go a lot of different ways.
Yeah, well, these are just some shots that I took at the German Ultimate UFO Conference, the largest of its kind in all of Europe. And this was the Inner Earth emissary doing his presentation, showing all the different satellite images, not only of the giant hole in the ice in Antarctica, but there's also a hole up in the Arctic region, according to this presenter. And I think this is the one in the Arctic region, that the Earth is more like a torus with a hole on each side, and the energy flows in and out through it.
Okay.
And he was saying that to go into Inner Earth, you have to be of a pure mind and pure heart. Your frequency has to be high, was the word he was using. And this kind of corresponds with the submarines after World War II. There were submarines that came up in Newfoundland in the summer of 1945, as well as way down in Argentina. And they had emptied their cargo hold, but they had some young men who had bandages on their faces and still pretty fresh wounds. This would be in July 1945, probably from the final Battle of Berlin, that were maybe being taken down to be a part of these colonies, but because they were, I don't know, recently injured or not pure of heart, pure of mind, they're still amped up from fighting in the war, they were turned away. And that would kind of make sense if what Lothar was talking about at the conference, that they only wanted people of a higher vibrational state to join them in Agartha, in the land of advanced civilizations.
Wow. Wild. Advanced civilization. This is an image you sent over to me to show.
Yeah, and this is the one of the first data dump, which I showed at my presentation in Germany, saying that, look, it's now coming out in the UFO files in the US that Germany was working on these craft that could go up to 40,000 foot elevation and travel at 1,500 miles per hour. So even all this stuff related to the high-tech German advancements, we've been vindicated on as well. Then you have the paperclip scientist named Hermann Oberth at his farewell dinner. He was asked by someone in the audience.
Not this fellow.
No, not him. This is just somebody with a map of Inner Earth. And they showed a bunch of different maps I hadn't seen before of this Inner Earth. not beyond the ice wall Earth. But Herman Oberth said at his farewell dinner, "We cannot take credit for our record advancement in certain scientific fields alone. We have been helped, and we have been helped by the people of other worlds." So I also said this quote in Germany, and I said, "You guys have been backward engineering this tech for almost 100 years." And people came up to me after the talk, and they just said, "It's so great that you can talk about this, because in Germany, you would not be able to do this. They have laws against aggrandizing the Third Reich or talking about even the technology."
That's right.
He said, "Leave it to an American to come to Germany to tell us our true history."
Well, I mean, when the threat is jail, we're speaking about the history, and that this is a literal law, everybody, like Brad mentioned. You can't talk about that in there if you are German.
No, they said you'd get a knock on your door as soon as you got home. They knew. And we knew that this conference was infiltrated.
Yeah.
The other speakers like, "Oh, yeah, we know. They're watching us. They're filming us."
Yeah.
But leave it to an American who could just leave the country and be done with it.
Yeah. Yeah. And then you flew back with 5,000 troops as well. We heard about that too. So tell us about this, what we're looking at here.
Okay, this was another photo that I took from the Inner Earth Emissary. And these are just some areas, North Ocean, South Ocean. So I take it. This is all the Inner Earth continents. And I'll be honest with you, Brad, I don't know how to wrap my head around this, nor to incorporate this inner sun. I don't even know if that's true or if this exists. I'm just showing what other people are saying. This is our understanding of what's down there. So let the reader make up their own mind. I'm just going to put this out there, but not necessarily saying that I believe that it is entirely the truth of what's in there, or if these maps are real, kind of like those schematics for Beyond the Ice Wall.
Yep.
People can just draw a map, right? You can just put a name on anything, and you don't really know for sure if it's real. But I would say that the U-boat maps, those are real, and those do have the providence of being collected by the Soviets at the end of the war. And then now there's a Soviet journalist who is releasing this with very exact directions to go under the ice. You come up to a lake, you sail across it with your U-boat, go down again, and then you pop up at the lighthouse of Agartha. So they do have very direct and immediate directions. And the Germans, they don't screw around when they say you dive 53.2 meters. That's exactly what they mean. And then when they say that these are the directions to Agartha and they name it by name, then I start to take notice because the providence for these maps is authentic. And the journalist Nikolai Subotin, he's doing talks on it now and starting to come out with it, because all this stuff, of course, was total top secret during the Soviet era. But after the Soviet Union fell in the 1990s, you could show up in Moscow with a suitcase full of hard currency and buy crashed UFO videos. You could buy alien autopsy videos. All that stuff's online now. But also this Antarctica material came out too, not just maps, but other stuff pertaining to the Nazis setting up colonies in New Schwabenland.
Wow. They think they're hanging around with Bigfoots down there, Brian?
Well, they don't have, I don't know if Bigfoot, I've never seen a sighting of that. But what they did have, according to some magazine articles in Nexus magazine, the British, when they were spying on them, they tried to send one of their commando forces. I guess they found an entrance to get into one of these tunnels that led to the bases. And they were being tracked and followed by, quote, polar men, who were like these geoengineered, hairy men that could survive up on the surface in the freezing cold weather.
See, that's
and they were bearing down on the Brits, and they're like, their last desperate call back to the base is like, I don't think we're going to be able to ditch them. And then, of course, never heard from them again.
See, that's what I feel. You have, just look at us around the world, right? So I've been to the Arctic. I've been with the Inuit. I actually lived with them.
Wow, cool.
For a few days out of the entire 2-week trip up there. And then I've been to Thailand, and I've been to Europe, and I've been to so many different places and continents in the world. And when you go to these different cultures, people are different sizes, different shapes. So
Right.
why then wouldn't it be maybe the Bigfoot Sasquatch of North America be a different shape in the Himalayan mountains and a different size, and then be a little bit different down in the tropics, and then also be different in Antarctica, like those British soldiers reported? And that's the first time that we've actually spoken about this particular story in all of our episodes, Brad. Would you mind providing a little bit more color for the audience on that story of the British soldiers? And I would call them Bigfoots, but maybe they're not exactly that size, but hairy aped men.
Yeah, not quite like Bigfoot, which are, I would say, a pretty separate species. They were calling these polar men, meaning they're more closely related to humans, but likely that they were a genetic manipulation experiment, perhaps a hybrid clone of some kind. Maybe they used Bigfoot. I don't know. But I had 3 separate remote viewers. They went to this coordinate where I felt was one of the under ice bases, and all 3 of them came back independently and reported on cloning facilities in Antarctica. And they said that they were pretty old, that they had been there for a while, and that it was really bizarre to see that there were vats full of body parts and stuff. And for those reading along, that's page 247. 247. Viewers, take a look. Yeah. So they've been working on this cloning technology. Look, we cloned Dolly the sheep in the 1980s. You don't think they have the ability to clone humans or hybrids now? Of course they do. And so why wouldn't the Germans use this cloning technology to make the ultimate polar guard? These polar men who could stand post out in the freezing cold temperatures. And then when the British were sending in this commando unit with explosives to try to blow up the base under the ice, that they got discovered and tracked, and then eventually hunted down and killed, because those soldiers never made it out. And this was a series of articles in Nexus magazine that I remember reading about 15 or 20 years ago. Nexus magazine is one of the last, and it always has been, the best free, open-minded magazine. It comes out of Australia, publisher Duncan Rhodes, who I've corresponded with quite a bit. And it's just one of the best magazines that's out there. So if you can get a hand on it or get a prescription or a subscription for it, I'd say do it. I've got a Nexus magazine in the trunk of my car that I read sometimes if I have to spend some time at a stop somewhere.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to bring everybody back to as we're closing out the program here in a little bit is this page. Let me see if I get the number. Page 130. Page 130. I guess I have to bring it back here for the background. Here we are. Page 130.
I could show it easier on the screen. Yeah, these are all the passports.
Passports.
Yeah.
Passports that say New Schwabenland on it.
That also say Base 211 and New Berlin.
And New Berlin.
As well as the Kriegsmarine Führer convoy, the final convoy of U-boats at the end of World War II. And these 2 came from my research assistant, Frank Takamer, on this book. And he said that there was the providence for their authenticity as well. And yeah, showing that people were going down there, and it was mostly a one-way trip, and they knew it. And they were looking for particularly orphans or people that lost their family in the war, or people that really just wanted to go down there. So David Hatcher Childress, friend of mine, he also does books on Antarctica and World War II armaments. He said that in the country of Croatia, where you and I are going to go next month, they were hugely sympathetic to the Third Reich, and they volunteered to go to Antarctica, as well as them taking several hundred beautiful young Ukrainian women down there to be the wives of the many scientists and the mostly men who came from Germany to go down to inhabit not only New Berlin, which was the largest settlement, basically a science city, according to Captain Mark Richards in his book on Operation High Jump, but then they had the base 211 or point 211, which may have had some surface buildings, but it too was largely under the ice. And then I've identified a third location, another colony called Thule or Thule, depending how you pronounce it. And it's based on these very large domes that you could fly an airplane into. And it too is in New Schwabenland. And I have a breakaway schematic of what the Thule base looks like on page 193. It's called the Thule Refuge. And you can see the Honeyboo UFO craft going into the mountain with the submarine pen, and then many layers and many different levels to this underground base. So making it virtually impenetrable and unseen by radar, satellite, or now even Google Earth. All you can see is just the opening for the craft to fly in and out of.
Holy cow. Wild. We have hundreds of people on Rumble and YouTube here as well. And then the show's streaming to socials very shortly after this, Brad. A bunch of them, there's at least two have mentioned from New Zealand and others, giving props to that. And we're looking at Greenland that just came back yesterday. So if anybody's not aware of yesterday, not only did you have there's a lot that happened yesterday, obviously, just in America alone. You had the UFO file drops, tranche 2. And then, of course, Trump says, I can't make it to my son's wedding. Extremely important business. Got to fly back and stay to Washington, D.C. And then he posts the image of Greenland, 51st state again. And we have a question in the chat on Rumble about, Greenland being of interest. And going back to the Taurus field and the inner Earth, honeycomb Earth theory, which I 100% believe, having seen stuff, is 100% myself in this lifetime personally believe it in all my heart and fiber of my being. Then we have Greenland and we have Antarctica and we have all these files being released and we have all this vindication for everybody. What is your take on Greenland and what is going on there? Why is that significant now then, Brad, as the follow-up to that? And its significance that it might have played, not just as a country, but as a location on our planet going back eons.
Well, and Greenland is the second largest sheet of ice on the planet, and that's over a mile thick. There was a guy who was doing interviews a couple months ago talking about finding a craft under the ice in Greenland too. The three known in Antarctica, nicknamed the Nina, Pinta, and Santa Maria. And by the way, the third largest ice sheet is in Patagonia, southern South America, and I went and visited that one too. I've only flown over the Greenland one and just did fly over it on my way to and from Germany. Seattle to Frankfurt, you go right over Germany. And yeah, it's just a big frozen expanse. But what's interesting about that, where the American base is, do you know the name of it in northern Greenland?
Space Force Base? No.
Well, it could have that double role, but it's called Thule, 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 once again. And that was the Viking name for the inner Earth. And that was originally a Nazi base during World War II that got then co-opted by the Americans after the war. And so that's one of the reasons why they want to get Greenland so bad, is it's kind of like a mini Antarctica, and there are many secrets below the ice there, and also a great place to hide out if you're an ET species, that you could be virtually undetected. Because keep in mind, the last unexploded regions of the world are, there you go, Ultima Thule, are under the ice in Antarctica, Greenland, and then the deepest depths of the ocean. Some of these latest document dumps, too, are also talking about the USOs, the unidentified submersible objects that are coming up out of the ocean. So people need to keep look out for that, too, because the under the ocean bases could also be very significant in this whole probe of disclosure. There you go, the Thule Air Base.
Yep. So they're calling it Patufic Space Base, pronounced Bidufik. So Bidufik instead of, it starts with a P, but that's.
And Thule.
Thule, yeah. Formerly known as Thule Air Base, located in Greenland. And what I notice up here, top left-hand corner, we're right on Peterson Shriver Space Force website. This is a military website. Peterson and Shriver Space Force Base. What occurs to me, since we're talking about Nazis and what they've been hiding and everything going back in history, is Arnold Schwarzenegger, father was an SS Waffen officer. Now it's all out there, right? And then everybody's worried about Schwarzenegger and everything. Well, just look what he did in 2020, 2021. Fuck your freedom. Get vaccinated. And I happen to know directly firsthand from somebody in the family that was with him that he's walking around with one of those large boots a little bit later on. Like, oh, I broke my ankle. This boot we've seen everybody that have been wearing for a period of time, then they're gone. Who is he married to of late? Shriver.
Right.
So Peterson Shriver Base, informally Thule Air Force Base. Patufic. Anyway, I don't know. I'm just pulling out threads here. Complete conspiracy. Who knows?
But Maria Shriver, she's a cousin to the Kennedys.
Right.
She's part of that family.
Yep. Yeah, so really interesting here. Anyway, but
I think they've gotten a divorce because Arnold got caught with the housekeeper.
Yeah, exactly. She
booted him.
Dropped his motorcycle as well too. But what's interesting too is I know this 100% personally and directly is Harley Pasternak was her personal trainer.
Huh.
And Harley Pasternak trained Drake and Seth Rogen and all those guys who, ended up in, rehab and things changed and whatnot. But anyway, and who is the other guy that was married to the Kardashian, that other singer with the big, big talker? I can't remember his name now, the rapper guy. But anyway, I mean, it's all interrelated as far as I'm concerned. The subject matter, the materials, the enslavement and everything that's been run over us, but for another time.
Part 4.
Yeah, exactly. Part 4. So you have Contacting the Desert coming up this next week, and everybody, the link's on the screen, cccpublishing.com. Then also, as a reminder, everybody, as I take everyone over here, Brad, just share with us a little bit more about the Consortium of Collective Consciousness publishing website. So you're not
that's where you can order my books or any of the other authors published through CCC Publishing, such as Laura Eisenhower, Michael Jaco, Leo Lion-Zagami, and others. But in order of the latest releases, that being my Antarctica book, Laura's book, and then Michael Jaco's book.
Yep.
All available on CCC Publishing. And I can still get those books mailed out before I leave Thursday morning for Contact the Desert. Of course, anybody that orders any of my books will get a signed copy.
Nice.
And I'm able to, get those mailed out before I leave. So you'll have those in about a week.
Wow. Excellent. Well, thank you very much, Brad. Appreciate all you do and standing here for everything. And this is the last image that you had sent me to bring up here. Do you want to just describe that and significance of it at this time now?
Well, yeah, this was in that first data dump of UFO files. And this was a letter from the FBI stating that they had an eyewitness who was watching the Germans backward engineer this technology and creating their own flying discs in 1943. that could attain the speed of 1,500 miles per hour, as well as reach an altitude of 40,000 feet. So we're actually talking about space flight vehicles. And I think if history were truly to be told, the Germans were the first on the moon by decades. And they were also the first on other planets in the solar system like Mars. And people who have done the 20 and back with the Nachtwaffen, the German secret space program, they've reported on very advanced technology and this German breakaway civilization colonizing planets in our solar system, including Tony Rodriguez, who's been to Ceres, which is part of the asteroid belt. It's the largest planetoid in the belt, and it is also a space base of the Nachtwaffen, the Dark Fleet of the Germans, and he worked with them. They call themselves the Deutsch, and out of Deutschland. So it was great coming back from this conference. Boy, did I get a lot of confirmations about my material and about other speakers who talked about inner Earth. And another speaker was also talking about the Honeyboo and the advanced military craft that were developed 80 years ago in Germany. So just an incredible amount of history that has been kept from us and also still being boycotted in Germany itself, that you can't even have these discussions there, which I think is just a travesty. But the tide is changing, Brad, and I think that there will come a time that people will be able to then research and speak about these subjects more openly in Germany and European countries as well.
Yeah. And then we'll be back at the Star Trek age, or
there we will.
Teleport everywhere and jump on our own little enterprises and go fly around, visit and hang out. Yeah. That's awesome. Well, thank you, Brad. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time. And again, it's on the screen. It's also below in the description. The very first link, cccpublishing.com. Put a www before that, because Brad, I've had somebody ask, like, do we do that with a triple W? I'm like, yeah, you can. So I should make
sure. Or you can. Either way, I think it'll go through.
It'll still go through. You'll get there. We'll see everybody next time. Have a great one. Bye-bye. Thanks for joining us on the program, ladies and gentlemen. Please like, follow, subscribe, share this with 9 friends and family. And of course, if you enjoy our blinged Buddha firing red pills from his 9mm, let us know. Right on, my friend. Thank you very much.